My name is Nate Wadsworth. I'm a part of Essential Craftsman. I've been involved with construction and now video and social media for quite a long time. And before that, being self-employed, my career's been, seems like I have to reinvent myself every 5 or 6 years. And so this is kind of the current iteration, which encompasses a lot of the skills I picked up from my dad in the first place, but just kind of being self-employed ever since then. We're in Southern Oregon. This is where we make most of our video content, and it's a beautiful part of the country, and it's really great. We get to live in a small town and make a living. It used to be that forestry and certain types of mining and mostly logging though were the primary industries around here, but now there's a lot of people doing a lot of interesting things, and YouTube is one of those. I think we've released over 500. Which means we've probably produced a lot more than that because not all of them made the final cut. But yeah, I think we recently put out our 500th video, which is quite a bit. And the way we've gone about it, most of those videos took a decent amount of work. There have been some that have been relatively simple vlogs and just kind of, at a desk chatting, but a lot of the videos were revolved around a project or a construction project that took quite a bit of work. So I'd say 500 hard videos is what it feels like to us. I know it's not for everyone. A lot of people, when a camera is on site, they just shut down. And I'm actually a little bit that way myself. And so I'm not saying that every person should overcome that and become comfortable with the camera. But I do think if you're the type of person who's okay with the camera and who's okay sharing your work, then absolutely you have to be putting content out into the internet. It doesn't mean YouTube. There's a lot of other platforms, Instagram and TikTok, and even just your website, but there are almost unbelievable perks that come with putting yourself out there, not just in the people you meet and maybe you could make a side income, but just in establishing yourself as an expert in whatever the given field, in learning new skills like video and film and getting better on computers. It's a very low risk undertaking. The worst thing basically is some criticism or some silly comments and very little downside. And it doesn't even take much gear. In fact, when we started, and to this day, I think a lot of our best videos are just shot with an iPhone. It's almost discouraging because we've got nicer gear and it turns out it doesn't matter at all. It just, what matters is putting out interesting projects. And I think people in the trades are uniquely suited to make interesting content. Now, depending on the trade, but very often in the trades, you're seeing things that not everybody gets to see, whether that's on a roof or in an attic or at some part of construction that only your trade is, kind of involved with. It's one of the neat things about the internet that you can see things you would have never seen before. And so tradesmen, I feel like, are uniquely suited to putting content out there that nobody else can. And so I highly recommend it. And if you are the type of person who doesn't like cameras, you do get over it and you get used to it relatively quickly. It kind of came to us both at the same time. We were making videos about construction techniques and processes. And I remember the conversation where I was saying, what would do really well, it would be fun to make a video about how to install windows. But he didn't have any jobs where windows are being installed. I certainly didn't. And that kind of snowballed to like, oh, if we were doing windows, then we could also install doors and we could talk about siding. And then all of a sudden it kind of realized like, oh, imagine if we had a whole house. We think of all the things that could be shown. And basically, once we kind of had that conversation, I think we both knew we have to do this. The timing kind of worked out. And actually interesting, right around that time when we had that conversation, I was in real estate at the time, so I was always looking online and seeing what properties were available. And I hopped on the internet to see what pieces of land were available. And there was this property for sale that was absolutely perfect. It was a dead-end road. It was on a hillside, so the background was kind of trees. It wasn't neighbors and roads. There was no street lights or noisy traffic. It was really close. Not only was it a good deal, it was a great deal because it needed some specialty concrete site work. What do you know? That's kind of the whole point, is to show these processes. So having that conversation, and then when we saw that lot for sale at a price that we could afford, it was basically, we're doing this, we have no choice. At that point, we committed to this project. Looking back, I don't think we realized how big of a project we were taking on. It was like biting off a big mouthful. You better be able to chew it. It almost was too much for us for lots of different reasons, but we recently finished. We're really proud of the series. If anybody ever tries to do something like that again, I'll be cheering them on because it's quite a bit of work, and I understand why there's not a million video series just like that online, and on Netflix for that matter, anywhere. We do have new projects, and they are relatively similar, although I don't think we will ever do a project that matches that one. There won't be a season 2 that just rolls right into the same type of video in the same types of way. But yes, we do have other projects coming. We're kind of trying to learn more. That the Spec House, especially towards the end of it, we feel like we kind of maybe not cracked the code, but we learned how to make videos in that way, and in some ways almost said or taught everything that was available to us. So we would like to do projects going forward that are not necessarily super different projects, but maybe teach different things through them. So there's a lot of videos to come, and there's different projects coming, although it's not going to be a match set or follow-up to our Spec House series. That's going to be a standalone sort of a series for us. I noticed at a young age, not only was my dad, my hero and idol, but a lot of my peers and other young men would kind of gravitate towards him, and he would be teaching and showing them things. So, and I actually really, that made me even more proud for him to be my dad. Just by being in the same house with him and watching him work, I learned an enormous amount. But maybe the most valuable thing or unexpected thing was when I was 18, when I left the house, I felt like I had his skills and power inside of me as a birthright almost. Now that wasn't the case, I've learned, but I think it's a level of confidence that I got from kind of, seeing one person who can build and do these things productively and confidently and quickly. I think that might have been the most valuable thing I left the nest with, was a confidence that, hey, it might be a lot of work, but you can build. And building happens through these steps. And so I could not have been more blessed, in the house that I was born into. And like I said, a lot of my friends and peers and other young men in the community I know had a similar experience being around him. He's this ability or gift he's had to mentor and teach has just grown. In a lot of ways, that's what Essential Craftsman is now. He's continuing to provide a mentorship, to be in a mentorship role for people who might be looking for that. Very few people have the ideal mentor in their life at the moment they need it, but with YouTube and the internet, you can kind of get that, and our viewers know, but it's really authentic. There's not a big studio middleman between my dad putting a message out and them hearing it in their truck or in their house. They're getting the real version of him. It's tough to know where Essential Craftsman will go in the future, and in a lot of ways, I actually don't think about it too much. I found that the more we stress about all the options and places we could go with it, it gets really overwhelming and it's uncertain. And the future is, anything's possible, but a lot of it we can't control. And so what we've kind of settled on is, it's actually maybe a mantra we've kind of used from the very beginning, which is there's really only two things that we can control, or that we choose to control, and that's making really good content and then putting it out as often as we can. Where the legacy and where it kind of goes years down the road, I don't know. I can't wait to see, but for us, what we try to do is really just focus on the work in front of us. It's like building anything, when you're starting into a construction project, it's true that building's gonna have a lot, in the future happening there, but you really have to just kind of focus on your job, what's right in front of you, because nothing's happening without that work getting done. And so I expect that's the approach we'll continue to take, because it's worked for us. And in terms of legacy, he built up a legacy for himself before our first video even launched. He's got a big family who loves and appreciates him. And so he's, the fact that he has a presence on the internet and has made new friends only adds to that. But family and friends and even the local people are certainly a big part of the day-to-day of what adds satisfaction and meaning to our lives. I do. although it's not possible for me to follow in his footsteps and do, take his role in anything, because I'm not him and I don't have the skill set he has and I don't have the ability he has. So I'm hoping to take the skills I do have and kind of go my own way. Not that it's a different way, but we'll see what the future holds exactly for me. To some extent that will be in Essential Craftsman, but I've got a lot of practice to do there, and I don't expect there will be a replacement for my dad. Whenever he's done making videos, nobody's gonna fill those shoes, because you can't. Everybody's so unique, and especially him. So I don't know, we'll see. Although about imposter syndrome, he's used those words himself. So that tendency that we all have to feel like we're faking it, that we're outside of our lane of where we should be. Even when you're the Essential Craftsman, he feels that way. If he's making a video about something that might be just outside of where he has his maximum level of expertise, he can kind of feel that way. So I think that feeling of being a little uncomfortable, that's where you want to be. Because if you're feeling uncomfortable, if you're outside of your comfort zone, if you're in that imposter place, if you spend long enough time there, all of a sudden it'll feel like, oh, this is what I know, this is who I am. So kind of like keeping myself on the edges of where I'm comfortable, and then eventually you get comfortable there, and then you're not impostoring anymore. We have put out content and we have made a lot of mistakes in making videos, and some of them were more serious, but that's one of the perks of YouTube and social media. The audience and the comments can very quickly enlighten us on what might have gone wrong or what might have been a bad idea. When we started, I had this idea. We had a couple videos that went mini viral and did really well, and so my natural instinct was, well, we should make more videos like that, and that kind of started leading us down a road of making more extreme kind of videos and trying to like one up the last thing, type things like that, and it just didn't work for us at all. And I'm so grateful we learned that lesson quickly. We've since then chosen to go a much more, it'd be like a tortoise and a hare, and it's the mantra that I mentioned earlier. Just the highest quality videos we can as often as we can, and not stressing too much about trying to get those huge grand slam pieces of content. I really prefer the more one foot in front of the other approach, and we really are just focusing on making valuable content where we're teaching something valuable, or giving a message that's valuable, or helping people feel a feeling, or just something of value to the people, rather than just entertain them. And so by trying to do that, even though it may be a little slower, it seems to be a better fit for us. And there's a lot of videos and a lot of competition on YouTube. There's a lot of people making entertaining and extreme content who can do it so much better than we can. So we've kind of settled on, let's do what it is that we can do best, which generally is putting my dad in a position to teach things that he's learned and acquired as skills over decades in the world. And it's not even just learning skills, because you just think about a life, when you're at his age, he's not too old, but he's in his 60s, which when I was younger, that seemed fairly old. And when you're in your 60s, you've lived through a few cycles by then. You've seen economies come and go, you've seen industries come and go, and you've seen these things happen before. And so it makes his perspective on the world now, which is uncertain, and in the trades, it's very easy to feel kind of like, oh man, I don't know, what should I do next? And so it's comforting hearing from someone who's been there, done that. And so for us, that's kind of the niche I feel like we're going to try to stick into.